Today I'm going to show you guys how to shorten and change the shape of your nails. Hey guys, Liz from the Nail Hub, and today I'm going to show you guys how to go and shorten your nails and change the shape. And I'm actually going to show you guys 5 different shapes. So I did my other hand with kind of a short kitten nail, and I'm going to show you guys on these nails how to change them to square, kitten, stiletto, coffin, and even keep the almond shape but just shorten it. Because this is one of the things that I get asked all the time is, you know, you do your set, you love the shape, and then they grow out and you're like, what the heck do I do with these things? How do I change the shape to something else? Or how do I shorten them? Or, you know, how do I do that for my clients? So I wanted to be able to show you guys how I go about doing it, and you'll get to see kitten on at least one of these nails. So if you guys want little short stiletto pointy ones like this, I like to call these kittens because they're not really a stiletto. They're just like super short little pointy nails. So I'll show you guys how to do that, and I'll show you also what I used on my nails over here. Before I get started, I wanted to show you the e-file that I'm going to be using in today's video. This is the Medicool Pro Power 35K. So it has 35,000 RPMs. Again, I've spoken about this a lot on my channel. RPMs only means rotations per minute. It just means how fast this machine spins the bit around. It really has nothing to do with the torque, which is how much power or how much filing power this e-file has. But I wanted to show you this one in the video because it is a very affordable model for any level of person out there. So I actually started my nail career with the Pro Power 30K, which is the purple one that you might have seen. We have both of them on our website at the Nail Hub. This one is the 35K. So Medicool is the manufacturer of this. They're in California. And I'll show you really quick what the front looks like. So it's just a basic power controller. Nothing too fancy, but I do like this one because, again, I love e-files that have a dial like this. It makes the speed transition so much smoother and so much easier to control. It also has a forward and reverse, and here it's right and left, but forward and reverse. And then also, I like that they covered the power switch. That's kind of nice because then you don't have to worry about getting dust inside of your power controller. And then this is where your handpiece plugs in. Super simple on the back. It does have a fuse that you can replace. It also has one more plug-in for a foot pedal. So if you want to be able to use a variable speed and control it with your foot, similar to like a sewing machine, you can do that with e-files as well. So you can put a foot pedal on the floor and then you can control the speed with how much you push your foot down. I've never been that kind of person, but a lot of people do like to work with a foot pedal, so that is a nice option. And then back here, you can also change it from 110 to 220. This power unit, power controller is rated up to 240 volts. So if you live outside of the, basically outside of North America, you can also use this. You just switch the power over and it's compatible. The one I'm using today has a US plug on it, but you can get any plug that you like for your particular country, okay? So I do like these e-files that are just more basic looking because I find that the more that they have as far as digital display, little buttons, all of this stuff, all that stuff starts to break down. That's just Liz's personal opinion, but I do find that the more mechanical a machine is, the longer it's going to last. The other thing I like about Medicool is just that they are a US company, so it is nice that me being from the United States, if I have an issue, like let's say my handpiece gets full of dust over using it and I need to send it in for maintenance and repair, they're in California. I can just send it in, and you should be doing that on a regular basis. I always tell professional nail techs, if you work full time, like 5 days a week, you should be sending in your e-file once a year to get it maintained. They take everything apart, they clean it out, they lube it up. It's just like getting an oil change for your car. They make sure everything's running smoothly, and then they send it back to you. So that's really nice. The handpiece, I'll show you. I do like the 35K because it is a little bit smaller. So when you hold it, you're able to hold it like a pencil. And you'll notice patterns between the e-files that I like to use, or the e-files that I like to promote, is just they all have a similar style. They all have a smaller nozzle area where it just feels more comfortable in my hand. This one, so my Erica's MT20, which I love, but unfortunately they discontinued it and they are working on a replacement that's going to come out later on this spring. The Erica's is always kind of weighted in the back. So most of the weight of the handpiece is in the back. This one is kind of in the middle. It's right about in this area is where I can feel the weight. So it actually pushes right here on the inside of my hand. And it really is just personal preference. It depends on what you like, what you're used to. And it's just the same thing as anything. It's just personal preference, what you like working with. And also, you know, obviously price point plays a huge role in, you know, what machine you can afford, what you want to start with. But this machine is very good. It's very high quality and it is a really reasonably priced option. So for those of you looking for a high powered, really high quality e-file, but you can't afford something that's $400 plus, this is going to be a really nice option for you. And like I said, we do have it on the Nail Hub if you're interested. So this is the Pro Power 35K. There's also the Pro Power 30K. They are very similar. It's just this one is a teeny bit more powerful. But they're both very high quality. And like I said, I started with the 30K when I first started. It was my e-file for I think 2 or 3 years before I switched over, and it was a great e-file for me and very affordable. So so I'm going to use this one in today's video. And let me just get this all plugged in and then we'll start with shortening and shaping. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do when you're going to shorten and shape is obviously we're going to do a fill at the back at the same time. You can absolutely shorten and reshape your nails at any time. You don't have to do it during a backfill, but I'll show you why I typically do it during a backfill. When we shorten, and you'll notice if I look down the barrel of this nail right here, okay, you'll see that the tip is very thin, but then as we go back into this apex area that we had that now has shifted, the nail is going to be thicker as we shorten it, right? So if I shorten it all the way back to, like, let's say here, let's say I go for square on this nail and I wanted to shorten it all the way down to like a natural length, square, squoval, something like that, you'll see that I'm going to have all this thickness right in here once I actually file this down. You can do it with a hand file, you can do it with an e-file, it doesn't matter. Obviously a hand file is going to take you longer, and I'll show you also how I hand file a nail into shape just in case you guys are curious, but for me, I always like to save myself the time and effort and use an e-file. But we're going to get shorter and we're going to get thicker as we do that. So instead of having to ruin the manicure and shave all that down anyway just to have to reapply color, which you'll see what happens when I do this, I usually wait to shorten and shape nails until I'm ready to do a backfill because I'm going to take all of this stuff off anyway during the backfill process. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So that's why I don't typically change my shape unless I'm going to change everything on top, because it's just, I need to be able to thin out the product as I'm working and I don't want to end up with like super thick nails. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, I'm just going to take a hand file and I'm going to actually just show you on my thumb because my thumb is the easiest to hand file because I can get the most leverage. Okay, so let's say I'm going to do square on this nail. Let's say I'm just going to take it all the way down and make a nice square nail. The way I would do this first is I actually like to shorten most of the length first if I'm hand filing. If I'm e-filing, I do it differently. But if I'm hand filing, I like to just start shortening all the shape down because I can get the most leverage, and then I'll refine everything on top. But I want to show you what this looks like. So let me just, I'm using 100 grit side, and this is going to take a second. So you can see all that filing, all I got was the tip off. But I'll show you really quick as I'm doing this. So see already how you can see the thickness of the gel right there. The tip is getting thicker as I'm filing it. This white is actually the peachy color that I have underneath the glitter. And then this is the clear gel that I have actually as my extension underneath. So you'll see this get thicker and thicker and thicker as I file. Okay, so a couple of things you'll notice is when you're filing, make sure you use the whole length of your file, otherwise it's going to take you forever. If you're filing like this, it's going to take you forever to do that. So that's why I like to do full strokes. And that's also why I like to keep the nail full thickness, is because if this was all thinned out already and I'm trying to do this with a hand file, I find that the nail wiggles back and forth a lot more and it feels flimsy, and sometimes you'll get cracking or breaking if the nail is already thin. So that's why I like to do the shortening with a hand file first, and then I go in and refine the actual thickness. But let's take a look at what this looks like now. So you can see that now, because I've shortened this nail all the way down from about here to there, you'll see that I'm starting to eat into the area where I originally had my apex. So because of that, I'm gonna end up with this super, super thick tip. So if you are trying to figure out how to shorten your own nails at home, like maybe right now you're not able to go get a fill or something and your nails are super long, you're like, oh my gosh, I just need to shave these suckers down. You're gonna end up with a nail just like this. It's gonna be super thick and you're gonna go, oh my gosh, this looks awful. What the heck do I do with these things, okay? Most people, if they're doing this on themselves, or even beginner nail technicians, what they'll do is they will whip out some clippers like this and they'll go, I'm just gonna clip this off to save myself the filing time. I do not recommend that you use clippers to shorten artificial nails. The reason why is because when you clip the length, you're clipping through very hard, rigid product. It's going to ricochet, number one. So if you are going to try and do that, you should definitely wear glasses or something to protect your eyes because it's all gonna like snap off and fly. But the other reason why is because you're gonna end up cracking the product. And usually when you crack the product with something like this, you're going to also lift it off of whatever nail that you've got underneath. So if I just go in here and start clipping away, I'm actually gonna get lifting all up on the sides. I'm gonna cause separation from all that pressure that I'm putting on my nail with the clippers. So that's why I don't recommend using nail clippers to shorten artificial nails, unless they're super, super paper thin. But if you've got thickness like this, don't use nail clippers. It's gonna cause separation and it's gonna pull on your nail. It's gonna, you know, cause all kinds of problems. And especially if you're just trying to shorten nails or something, that's gonna be a big problem for you. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you just need a really nice high quality gritty file. You're gonna shorten the length down. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna refine the actual thickness on the tip. So as you can see from the side, okay, this actually starts to look more like more of a European style square when we do this because we're so used to nails kind of tapering down a little bit. You can do one of two things. If you do have an e-file, you could leave this on the top. It's a nice profile on the top, and you could just go in with your e-file and actually shorten and shave from the underside. That looks really nice, especially if you like this kind of higher apex that comes straight out type of square nail. Like I said, it's more of like a European style, but for most of you, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna refine this thickness on the top and make it look more natural. So we're gonna take our file and we're actually gonna file the top. I like to actually file kind of like down the barrel like this, because I can even patch up some of the color. If I'm gonna keep the same color, I can do that, or if I'm removing all the color, I can do that as well. And this is how I would do it on my own nails with a hand file. I don't usually use hand files. Okay, so as we do this, we're gonna get a thinner nail towards the tip. You can see it's even starting to refine the edges here. So we just need to keep going. Can you see how it's starting to get nice and thin now? I need a little bit more on this middle part and then a little bit more on this right-hand side. But now I'm starting to get more of that nice profile that I had before, where I want the thickness of the gel to be in the center mohawk area. I want it to be refined on the sides, and I want it to also be refined towards the tip of the nail as well. Okay, so I'm gonna change this shape, and then I'm gonna remove the rest of the color, and then I can go into actually prepping the area around my cuticle so that I can backfill this nail. So when I go around the sidewall areas and the cuticle area, you want to be very careful that you're not actually filing aggressively on your natural nail. So when you see me come through here, I'm actually just filing on the product area, and I'm making sure that the edge of my nail file doesn't actually dig into my natural nail. You just want to file on the artificial product and get rid of that part first, and then it'll naturally start to blend into your natural nail regrowth area. So just be a little bit more cautious around this piece. And it's usually the product is so paper thin around this area, if you've applied it properly, that there isn't a lot of filing to be done anyway. And remember, if you have lifting or something like that, you also just want to file on the product just before the lifting, and that lifted area should naturally fall off once you get the product blended out. So don't file, you know, on your natural nail too much, just file on the product, and then everything else kind of falls into place. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look down the barrel this way, and I can see I've got like a little, if I remove the dust, I've got like a little piece right here that I just want to take and smooth, just a little hump. And then I'm going to look at the nail this way. Okay, so you can see I've got it nice and thinned out now, and I've got that tip more, you know, kind of refined. I've got it smoothed down just a little bit, not hanging down off the nail, but just thinned out. And then if we look at it down this way, I'll put my finger right there. I could do just a teeny bit more thinning right there, but that's starting to look almost credit card thickness on the edges. So you really ultimately want to use the goal of getting your edges of your nails at the very, very free edge. You want them to be about the thickness of a credit card. Everywhere else you can add thickness to create the strength, but right at the free edge, it should all taper to about a credit card thickness. And that just makes sure that the nails, you know, they look nice and natural, and you're able to pick up change and, you know, actually use your fingers. Okay, so I've dusted off my finger here. Now I like to typically cleanse the nails at this point, and then I go in and I start doing all my cuticle prep work. But the purpose of this video is more about how to reshape your nails than it is about how to prep and backfill, because I've already shown you guys a lot of prep and backfill videos, and I just kind of wanted to show you like how I refine with a hand file. I can even get this dust out of the bottom so you guys can actually see. Okay, so there I've got nice tapered nail that's been shortened to a nice square shape. Okay, and I usually also don't perfect, like you'll see like on this left corner, it looks like it's a little bit higher up. It's not perfectly perpendicular to my finger. I usually don't worry about perfecting the shape until I reapply product, because I'm also going to have to backfill, reapply product, refile, potentially refinish file. So I don't spend too much time refining the shape until I'm completely done with the backfill of the nail. And you also want to think about when you're doing square nails, I also like to make them a little bit more tapered looking at this stage, because by the time I put my product on and my color and everything, then it's going to look a little bit wider. So if you're going for this like nice, perfectly square nail, I like to make this part, when I'm doing this filing process, I like to make it just a teensy bit more tapered than what I ultimately want the nail to look like. That just gives me room to add some product, to add glitter, you know, whatever I want, and then I'm not going to end up with this like flared nail. Depends on what you're going for, but in this case, I want more of like a nice natural square, so I'm going to taper this just a little bit more at this stage of the game. So now that I've shown you guys kind of how to remove and shorten with a hand file, now I want to show you guys how I do it with an e-file. So I've done the square. I'm going to do almond, I'll do kitten, almond, and then stiletto, and then coffin on the last one. And that way you guys get to see all the different shapes that maybe you might want to go for, and how you kind of transition from already having product on your nails to completely switching to a different shape. Okay, so I'm going to use that Medicool e-file, and I'm going to use the volcano bit. And I'm going to use the volcano bit mainly to thin out the nail and get the majority of the product off. Okay, so I've got the e-file running at full speed. That's all 35,000 RPMs. Some of you may wonder why bits stick out sometimes. So this is cool to know that the bit doesn't necessarily have to be all the way down inside and touching the tip of your machine. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, or if you've seen people that work like that, is they'll have a bit, I'm trying to find a shorter one. Okay, here is a shorter shaft bit. Okay, so a lot of people, what they do is they stick their bit in like this and then they work with it. The problem is when you go to work on a nail, you're gonna hit the tip of the nail with the tip of your e-file. Like, it doesn't give you any way to maneuver when you stick the bit in like this. So that's why I like to keep the bit a little bit further out. You don't want to do it like this because it just gives it so much leverage to bend this shaft. But I absolutely keep my bits maybe about that far out of my hand file or my e-file, because I want to be able to file the whole length of the nail. And so you can see, like, depending on the length I'm working on, as I'm filing, I'm able to get all the way up and go through the nail without hitting the end of the e-file. Does that make sense? So that's why I don't recommend shoving your bit all the way down. And most bits that I have come across, and especially the ones that we like to sell, they have a much longer shaft. So let me show you the difference between the two. Can you see how long the shaft is on this volcano bit that I've got? And so I like that because it allows me to fit it inside of an e-file and let it stick out a little bit so that I have some room to work with my bit. Okay, so when I put it all the way in, I get all that leverage on the nice long shaft inside of my handpiece, but I also get enough length that I can have the bit extend a little bit. With a shorter one, you can imagine if I'm sticking the bit a little bit further out on my e-file like that to be able to work, look how much shaft is actually inside of my handpiece. There's not much there to keep that bit in place, and depending on where the lock chuck is in your e-file, you may not be able to hold on to that bit in your particular e-file. When I have one like this, I can stick the whole shaft down inside my e-file, make sure that that's nice and secure and it's not going to bend. It's got all that nice strength and leverage on the bit, but I'm able to have it come out. So I just wanted to point that out because I know that a lot of people get confused about why is this part of it sticking out while you're working, and actually there's an important reason for that. Okay, so let's get down to the filing piece. So full speed, light touch, okay? I'm gonna do kitten on this one. So again, what I like to do is I like to thin out the product as much as possible because it makes it easier for me to reshape and shorten the nail. And just with this, I mean, look how fast I'm able to do this. Okay, so nice, thin, got the majority of the color off. I can go around and just make sure I get all that off. This machine has great torque. So like when I file the product, it just takes it off really nicely. Now, I'm also going to use this bit to shorten this nail. What you want to do is use it at about a 45-degree angle because it has all those flutes on it. You don't want it to catch, so keep it at about a 45-degree angle. And since I'm going to go short kitten like I have on my other hand, I'm just going to very lightly touch the edge of the nail, like super light touch. You can see it just shave that product off. And then over here, same thing. And just get it about that close, and then I can do the rest with a hand file. Okay, so I've got the basic gist of the shape. Again, what I'm looking for is getting the majority of the product thinned out. I've got a little bit more here, but I'm not worried about that because I still need to go back and prep. But this is the first step that you do when you're going to remove the old color and kind of shorten. You want to shorten before you reapply product because otherwise you're going to waste all that product, right? So we want to have the general length and shape that we're going to be working with. And you could even, literally, you could even wait to reshape this until the very end if you wanted to. But I like to kind of get an idea of what I'm working with. So I am going to go under here. Again, make sure that the sidewalls line up. Even on a super short kitten nail, I don't want to file into my real sidewall. I'm just going to adjust this. And for a kitten nail, you want to kind of come one side to the other really nice and gentle. The key here is gentle because with gel, every little movement of your file is going to change the shape. So just be very cautious about what you're doing. Take it one step at a time. And then, of course, you want to turn the finger around, make sure that that point is centered on the finger generally. And then you can go in and do all of your prep, reapply, and then you can perfect this shape at the very, very end, okay? And I'll show you guys that in a second after I get all my product reapplied. Okay, on this one, I'm gonna do almond. So again, full speed, light touch. You can do strips down the nail. You can go back and forth, whatever your heart desires. It's like literally I switch it up as I go. It just depends on what area I'm trying to attack. If I'm doing my own nails, if I'm doing someone else's nails. And super light touch, full speed will make sure that this glides instead of catching on stuff. If you do catch the nail a little bit, don't panic. It happens to everybody. The thing is if you feel the e-file catch on something, immediately just lift your hand away. It's the biggest, best habit that you can create for yourself is if you feel something catch, like let's say you're filing the edge and you just feel it pop or catch, just lift your hand away. Nothing bad is gonna happen. Don't drop your e-file, don't panic, just lift your hand and it's gonna be totally fine. Okay, so almond, same thing. I wanna keep this general shape, but I just wanna make it shorter. So super light touch, come around, 45 degree. What I'm doing with 45 degree is I'm having my bit like this, not like this. So when I go around the edges, I'm kind of keeping my e-file at a 45 degree angle to the nail. And I'm just barely touching the edge. And you can shorten this down as much as you want to. Most people just want maybe ½ a centimeter or so. And again, these little side pieces, you can do that with your hand file. You just want to get the general length done. If you notice that when you shorten it, you've got a little bit more thickness here, you can go ahead and take that out. And you can also come up from underneath as well. And if you want to lift that tip just a teeny bit, you can do that just by going underneath, okay? So you can perfect the angle from the side as well as the shape, and that'll help take care of some of the thickness that you're seeing too. Okay, so there I've got my general almonds. Then I can go with my hand file. Again, lining up my sidewalls, making sure that I'm not filing into the real sidewall of my real nail. I want to always line that up and then go from that point to make sure that I'm maintaining the strength of my sidewall, and I'm making sure that as this grows out, I'm not going to have any notches. Okay, so there I have my general almond. If you want to, you know, general as in this is the general shape, and then I'm going to refine this after I do my backfill. Again, you can make this a little bit pointier depending on how you want the finished nail to look. If you want the finished nail to be more of like an oval-y shape, you can leave this a little bit wider. If you want this to be more pointy but rounded on the tip, you can do that as well. I like kind of like the something in between. It's kind of like an oval almond. But I'm just gonna pretend like I'm shortening this nail a little bit but leaving the general shape alone, okay? So if I dust off my hand, you guys can see that I've got kitten and my almond, and then I've got my square here. Now, one thing to point out is as you're shortening, thumbs obviously are harder because you have to line the two thumbs up together. But when you're filing someone's nails, whether it's yours or someone else's, the best way to make sure that they're all going to be the same length is to line up the cuticle areas of the fingers, okay? So if this is someone's hand, I'm just going to show you guys my hand for a second. Obviously, the client's hand is going to be out the other way, but they're going to hold their fingers out this way. What you do is relax, get them to relax their fingers, like wiggle their hand, and then just pull, like basically you kind of push their finger back so that you're able to line up the cuticle areas together, okay? So you just want to create kind of an imaginary line that runs along the cuticles, so like this one. Okay, I can get my middle finger to bend and my pointer finger stays straight, and then just create an imaginary line between, like if I drew an imaginary line across here and I lined up these two cuticles, I want to make sure that the ends of those nails are lined up with one another. So I could actually make this almond a teeny bit shorter to line up with this kitten nail, okay? And then here, same thing. I eyeball it and I go, okay, I know how much I need to shorten it now in order to end up with the same length of nail. So as you're going, always be looking here, line them up, and then draw your imaginary line down here to make sure that you're getting the same overall length. And that works for both when you're shortening as well as when you're finish filing. Okay, so we did square, kitten, almonds. Now I'm going to do stiletto on this one, and then, which is very similar to a kitten nail, except it's going to be a little bit less rounded. It's going to be more straight. And then I'll do coffin on this one. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to take off the products on top, thin it out. And this bit just does such a good job of removing stuff. I don't feel any heat. I don't feel any vibration. And in literally a few seconds, I've got all the color off. Okay, so same thing, just kind of eyeball it so that you get an idea of how much shorter you need to go. For a stiletto, what I'm going to do is really make this very, very straight and pointy on the sides. Okay, and a true stiletto also, like a lot of people I know are probably going to go, that's not a real stiletto. Real stilettos actually have a very high apex and go out, and they're kind of more lifted, I guess is a good way to put it. But I'm just going to show you guys what an average salon client is going to call a stiletto and what they're going to ask for, because they don't always use the correct terminology. We don't always use the correct terminology, and it's a whole game of trying to translate what someone means when they say, it's the same thing they say, like, oh, I want a shellac manicure, but they don't actually mean shellac, they mean gel polish, right? So it's like all these things that we deal with. Okay, so for stiletto, rather than with kitten where it kind of is rounded on the sides and then comes to a point, with stiletto you want to actually keep it very, very pointy and triangular and straight sidewalls. So what I like to do is use the whole side of my hand file to really make sure that that stays nice and straight. So I don't do any like flicking or anything. And then again, you want to make this more tapered than what you want the final nail to look like. Once I have the sides done, then I like to go in with, you know, once I have the sidewalls done, then I like to go in on the under edge and make sure that this all lines up as well. And just gently, because I'm going to have to do this probably again after I reapply products, making sure that my real sidewall of my nail lines up with the sidewall of the filing that I'm doing. And then if the tip is a little bit low, meaning like this tip way out here, you feel like it's pointing down a little bit, just take your file and gently kind of file that tip up. It'll end up thinning it out a little bit and it'll lift it just a tad. And then you can also refine this just a teensy bit more so that you don't end up with like a big flat edge on the edge. You kind of want to, like you'll notice this when you file, you'll end up with like a flat edge as you've filed the shape around the edge of the nail. What you want to do is then taper that back up. So you want it to be thin on the very, very edge, and then you want it to be like thicker as it goes up. So you can refine and bevel that edge so that you don't have these like flat walls on the sides, okay? So you'll see that when you do this yourself, you'll see like, oh, I ended up with like a weird flat wall. What you want to do is just blend that back in so it's nice and thin around the edges. And I typically do like to thin the product out. I'm not a big fan of the, like, don't touch this and just put a bit of product and blend it, because what ends up happening is and it doesn't matter what brand you use, but this is kind of a good rule of thumb, especially when I worked in the salon. I didn't know what people had on their nails. Sometimes people would come from other places. Sometimes it'd been a long time since they'd been in. So you're going to have to do two things. You're going to have to change where their apex is anyway, especially since you're shortening the nail. That's why I take everything almost all the way down, because I'm going to have to change everything on top regardless. I have to change the complete structure. Once you shorten the nail, you have to completely change where your apex is located. You have to change all of that stuff. And you have to thin it out as well, because thicker nails are, longer nails are going to have a lot more product on them. The other thing is that the product ages over time. All product ages over time. Gel, doesn't age as quickly as acrylic does, because acrylic continues to polymerize for sometimes up to a month after the application, which means it continues to get more rigid, more hard, and that's why you kind of get that like yellowing, crumbly, brittle acrylic after a long time. Not all the time, but acrylic does continue to polymerize much longer than gel does. However, the product does age. It gets stained, depending on like what the chemicals the gel has been exposed to over the 2 or 3 week period that the person has been, living their life. I just find that it's nice to constantly refresh the product by taking stuff down. I know there's a lot of people out there that teach like, oh, don't waste that product. Don't take it all the way down, just backfill and blend. But I just find that over time, that tends to have more issues than if you're constantly refreshing the product. Okay, so let me just quickly show you. I'm going to turn my finger around so I can make sure that this is straight. And anytime you're doing points, it's a good idea to file a couple times on one side and a couple times on the other. That way you don't end up over filing one side, okay? And you can also make it extra, extra, extra pointy, because by the time you backfill and put more product, this tip is going to round out a little bit anyway. Okay, so every time you do that, just bevel the edges. Make sure you don't have like some thick wall. Nice and gentle. Okay, so you can see that like stilettos are typically much more just pointy. Kitten is almost like a mix between an almond and a stiletto, in my personal opinion. So this is Liz's nail shape world. This is how I view the different nail shapes. Is kitten is kind of this like more rounded, pointy nail that kind of has this arrowhead shape to it. Stilettos are just like boom, like dagger, triangle, super, super pointy. And I could even make this just a teeny bit more straight on this particular side, okay? And then I've got kind of my oval, almondy, thing going on here. But again, it's up to each person's interpretation. Some people like to do these shapes a little bit differently. Not a big deal. Okay, last but not least, let's do the coffin or ballerina shape. That's also one of those discussions, which is coffin to a lot of people is like this, where the sidewalls are super straight and then the tip is just cut off, and ballerina is more rounded on the sides and then the tip cut off. Again, totally up for interpretation. I'll show you Liz's coffin nail, which is more kind of like a ballerina. All right, so thinning this out again, taking off the old product. Full speed, light touch. I know that sounds crazy, but you'll notice if I don't have full speed on here, or if you don't have full speed on your machine, it's going to bounce more, it's going to vibrate more, and it's just going to take forever, and you're going to end up putting more pressure on the nail, which is what you don't want to do. Literally super, super light touch. Keeping that bit parallel as I go through, because I don't want to file into my natural nail. I just want to get that product off of there. Okay, so I've got that much done. Now, coffin or ballerina, whatever you want to call it, or if you feel they're completely different, that's totally fine too. I'm just going to shave off these sides a little bit, and then I'm just going to shorten this tip into more of a square. Okay? And then I can do the rest with my hand file. So again, I'm going to do sidewalls. I'll do under a little bit just to make sure that that all lines up. And then depending on how like tight you want this ballerina nail to be, like if you want the tip to be super, super teeny tiny, you can absolutely do that. Totally is personal preference. Nail shapes is something that can be ultra serious. It's like you can get into the European style nail shapes that are like, you know, you must have this angle of this, blah, blah, blah. But for salon nails, especially in the United States, this is what people are going to want for some type of coffin shape, especially for this short of a coffin. If it's a longer coffin, you can make it much more dramatic. But for salon length nails, like typical run-of-the-mill clients are going to want a coffin that's about that length because that's all they can really handle. And they're going to want just that tapered shape with a square tip. Okay, so let's review all 5 shapes that we just did. We started with those long ovally almond nails, and now I've got all of these different shapes on here. Okay, so we've got the ballerina or coffin, whichever one you want to call it. We've got a stiletto style shape. This is like a salon style stiletto. Salon style almond ovally nail, salon style kitten nail, which is also extremely popular, and salon style square nail. Okay? All right, so I'm going to backfill these and then I'll show you how I perfect the shape at the very, very end. Okay, so I just backfilled my nails. I used Luminary in Serenity, and I used Light Elegance Bee in Your Bonnet, which I just love this glitter gel. It's so pretty. These two go together really nicely. And then what I did is I did like mini encapsulation with Light Elegance Super Shiny, just to kind of cover the glitter so that I can finish file a little bit. I like to finish file after I've encapsulated. I don't know why, I just like that feel and that look because it just makes the nails perfectly smooth and perfectly clean looking, and then I just put a thin layer of top coat at the very end to finish. So I'm just going to cleanse off the tacky layer and I'm going to clean all of these, and then I'm going to finish file. And that way you get the perfect shape at the very end. When you're working, you're adding products, you're going to get lumps and bumps. And even if you do perfect application on the nails, I mean, these nails are like this one. This ring finger looks, I mean, pretty dang good as far as the shape, but I can see some imperfections on the sides and I need to refine the shape anyway. So I'm going to do all of that at the very end before I put on my final top coat. All right, so let's start with the square nail. I usually hand file also at the very end to refine the shape. I don't need to do any aggressive filing, so I just use a hand file. So I'm going to get an idea of where I want the square end to be. So I'm going to take my hand file, and you can do this even up this way too if you want to. If you do it this way, you can get a really square nail. Just depends on if you want it more like rounded looking or if you want that severe square look. But this helps you get a straight edge because your file is straight. Okay, so then I have that. Then I can do my sidewalls. So I'm just going to do straight sidewalls on both sides. And then you can do under on the side to make sure those line up. And if you guys haven't watched my, my actual like shaping, you know, extension videos, go back and watch those because I do all of this step by step. And then I'm just going to refine the top, just nice and light because I don't want to file through all my glitter, but that's why I put top coat on top. You can do any clear gel. It doesn't have to be top coat. I just like, you know, I like to use the same brand of clear gel as what my last layer is. So since I did that Light Elegance glitter gel, I'm going to use a Light Elegance clear gel. And I just had the bottled super shiny, handy. It self-levels really quickly. And it's a hard top coat, so it's nice. It's a good option. You could also use like Jimmy gel. You could also use any of the potted gels from Light Elegance, whatever your heart desires. So I'm just going through and making sure that like the profile looks nice and that from the top this looks nice as well. I don't have any like bulk. And then I can kind of see through as I'm filing, I can see the glitter. So I just keep an eye on that and make sure that I'm not filing through too much of my glitter. You can also dust off your finger periodically just to be able to look at that. Can you see that? I can see the glitter through the clear gel. So I'm looking at that as I'm filing and just perfecting this. And then I also like to look down this way, make sure there's no crazy bulk on any particular side. Okay. That looks pretty dang good to me. And then depending on if you don't like sharp corners underneath, you could round out the corners, but that looks fine to me. And then at the very end, if you want to, you can also bevel the edge, and I'll show that at the very end, but you have to do that with an E-file. That's the most reasonable way to do that. Okay, so kitten nail is going to be a little bit rounded into a point, so I'm going to flick my file a little bit more to get kind of that rounded, pointy shape. I'm going to go under, make sure that I don't have this hook on the tip. So can you see how I have like this little like talon hook after applying my product? So I'm going to go under and just file that upward so that I get rid of that. That way I get like a nice refined tip. And then same thing, I'm going to go through super light and just go around and make sure I don't have any lumps or bumps on the top and get that nice dolphin nose going. It's so funny. I never used to call it dolphin nose, but somebody told me dolphin nose. I forget who it was, and ever since then, that's all I can think of now. Dolphin nose just means it like all kind of tapers and bevels towards the tip and just looks nice and smooth, just like a dolphin's nose. That way we don't have any like dips or bumps or anything towards the edge. Okay, so up here, I can tell from the reflection this is pretty dang smooth. So I'm just gonna leave that alone because I don't really need to file through it. You could remove the shine if you're concerned about, you know, the top coat not adhering, but I don't typically have that issue, especially when you're doing like fresh layers right on top of one another. Okay, and then just see how it's kind of like a rounded, pointy nail. That's my version of a kitten. And then the almond nail, same thing, just go through and kind of smooth this out first. This one I like to chalk out just a little bit more because I can kind of see the roundness a little bit better. I find that almond and ovals are actually the more difficult shapes to do because they're just, one little bit can change the shape. So I like to kind of chalk out these nails. And again, it just depends on how I feel. It depends on what I see when I'm working. There isn't really like a perfect way to file other than, you know, making sure you're not filing notches and things like that. But as far as like how which order you like to do it in, I mean, if you're doing competition nails, yeah, there might be a perfect order. But if you're doing salon nails, you are going to come up with your own rhythm and your own pattern, and that is totally fine. The only thing I do recommend is try to come up with some kind of pattern that you stick to, because that way if you lose your place, like let's say you start talking to somebody or you look up from what you're doing, you'll know where you are. And since I'm doing different shapes on every nail, and I'm just kind of doing this on myself, I'm not doing my typical, like, you know, all 10 nails. I'm just doing this on me, and they're all different. So I'm just going to go through and shape every single one. Okay, so see how I was able to kind of make that more, like a little bit more pointy towards the end, and then I can round this out. Again, make sure you turn your hand around, make sure that everything goes to the center, like where you think it's going to go. I'm going to do a little bit more on this side. And just round that out just a teeny bit. Okay, and then same thing, like look down, make sure there's no crazy thickness, like right here I could probably do just a teeny bit more. All right, and then for my stiletto, just make sure that the sidewalls are very, very straight. So sidewall, like right up here by where it touches the skin, And then I can go into the actual sides of the extension piece. Now, if you do want to shorten this one a teeny bit more, sorry, if you want to shorten that one just a teeny bit more, like you don't like that this tip is extended just a teeny bit, like they're all pretty much the same length. This ring finger might be a teeny bit longer. But if you're going to do stiletto-y, you kind of want the tip to extend just a hair past where you want the overall length to be, because you want it to look really pointy and sharp and long. So err on the side of having the really pointy ones be a little bit longer. Okay, and then same thing. Anytime you do pointy nails and you're adding product, sometimes you end up with like this thickness here. So you don't want to have this bird beak on the end. So I like to go up underneath and just file that up just a touch so that it's nice and refined on the very, very, very tip. Make sure that the sidewalls line up. So make sure you actually get your real nail here. I'm going to try and turn my hand just a teeny bit more. Can you guys see that? So make sure you actually go like all the way back to where your real sidewall is and you're not creating a notch here. That's super important, especially with these pointier shapes. That's like the #1 mistake that I see, is that when you look at the sides, there's some notch or something. And I also see a lot of nails that get posted where they obviously haven't refined the sides. Like I can see all of this kind of product hanging down or roughness. The sides, to me, are the part that make it the most beautiful, because the profile is really the thing that you want to show. So make sure you're doing every angle, and that's why I like to finish file at the very, very end after I've applied my color and my glitter and everything, especially when I'm working with like a product like Luminary that's like a builder color gel and a glitter gel from my Elegance that's thicker products. It's not just, you know, super thin coats of gel polish. Even with gel polish, I like to go back and make sure that I refine everything, because you can always get some little piece of grit or fuzz or a little bit of thickness or something where it just alters the shape and you've got some little rough piece hanging down and it just doesn't look cute. So I like to always make sure that I go back and clean everything up. Okay, and then again, I'm going to turn this around. Just make sure that that is center. Maybe like a little bit more this way. Okay. And then last but not least, my little baby coffin. And again, this is just, you know, my way of doing salon style nails. You know, this isn't like crazy competition or anything. It's just how would you shorten and reshape nails for a client or for yourself when you want to switch it up. And this is a typical thing that happens with clients, that they start out with one shape and then they come back 3 weeks later and they're like, I want to completely change my nails. I want to go for something else that I saw. And how do you do that without starting from scratch? That's exactly why I wanted to do this video. Okay. So I've got coffin, salon stiletto, salon almond ovally nail, salon kitten nail, and salon square. So I'm going to dust these off. I just use a little fluffy brush, but these typically are not allowed in a lot of states if you work in a salon setting. So you can also use a manicure brush like this, clean ones, and you can sanitize these in your quats and use a clean one on every client. These work great also for getting all the dust out after you've finished filing. And then you can put your top coat right on, and they're great for cleaning underneath too. You can put a little bit of alcohol in here if you want to when you're done filing, but I mean, you don't really need to. There's no natural nail that's exposed. You've already cleaned the nails before you backfilled them. And when you get them wet, you have to kind of wait to let them dry before you put your top coat on. So I just do it dry like this at the very end, but I use a clean manicure brush for every person. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go back and do a nice thin coat of top coat again. Reveal the beauty underneath. And then I'll be done. It's gonna be a little weird having 5 different shapes, but that's totally fine. You guys are worth it. And I can always change these later. I just love this color combo. It's so pretty. Serenity is like a really nice creamy color. It's not pink, but it's not really peach either. I have very pink skin, and so I have a hard time with nudes that are too orange or too green. And this one is just a good balance. It kind of takes on whatever natural skin tone you've got going on, and it doesn't show one or the other too crazily. And I just love this bee in your bonnet on top of it. It's so pretty. And my skin looks a little dry right now, but I'm not worried about that. I don't really have a lot of cuticle to trim, and I don't like, even in the salon, I don't like trimming a lot of cuticle because a lot of times it's just you need moisture and you need to let your skin relax. So I did a little bit of kind of removing and refining when I did my nail prep. And especially for salon nails, when I've got a time limit and I've got a set price that I'm charging, I stick to whatever amount of work I can get done in that appointment time. If people want to come in and get, you know, full-on Russian manicure every time, then I book that especially for that. But these are exactly how I would do like salon style nails. So I'm going to cure this, and then I'm going to cleanse and moisturize. I'm going to take off the tacky layer. Give it a nice scrub. Some gel cleanser. This will just reveal that beautiful shine. Okay, and then I'm going to apply my cuticle oil. I love Daddy oil. This is by Famous Names. Daddy oil is literally the best. I'm going to put some on my cuticles, rub this in. You can even do underneath. Okay. And again, if you're working on clients, you can use the dropper and just drop onto the finger. You don't have to touch the finger with the dropper. I'm just doing this. This is my own cuticle oil, so I don't really care about touching the dropper, but just in case you guys are wondering about that. So I like to rub it in, rub it all down the fingers too. You can even like have the client rub their hands like this. Daddy oil is awesome. And you can take a dry wipe before you take your pictures and just go back and buff them one more time. It'll kind of take off any of that excess oil that might have flooded the cuticle. And there you have it. I have my kitten nails on one hand and my 5 different shapes on the other. Also, I'm going to be giving away the e-file that I used in today's video. It comes with a US plug or a North American plug. But it is able to be used up to 240 volts. All you have to do is switch that little piece on the back. You would just need a plug adapter. So this is open to anyone, anywhere in the world. I will ship it to you for free. This is an amazing e-file. And because I'm giving away something a little bit more expensive this week, what I'm going to do is ask you guys, in order to win this, if you would please share today's video on your Instagram. Tag me in the caption at the Nail Hub, and also don't forget to put the hashtag NailHubYT. That way I can see your post. And I will pick a random winner on Friday. So if you want to be one of the people that might win this e-file, just share today's video. You can take a screenshot of your favorite part. You can share the actual video link, whatever you want, on your own social media. Tag me at the Nail Hub, you know, write something about what you learned from today's video that you thought was cool. And then don't forget to use the hashtag NailHubYT. That way I'll see your entry really easily, and I will pick a random winner on Friday. Okay? Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you watching today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.